Welcome to the Columbus School of Law. I'm Steve Payne. I'm the Dean of the Law School here at the Catholic University of America. And it's wonderful to have you all here with us today. And I'm thrilled that Ambassador Magierowski has joined us. Hope I came close on that, Ambassador. We're really thrilled to have you here. And I'm going to let one of our students introduce the ambassador, but I thought I would say that we love our connection with Poland and our programs there, including the International Business and Trade Summer Law Program. I have to look at that because they give me, IBTSLP. It's not exactly marketable, right? The International Business and Trade Summer Law Program that was founded by former Jagiellonian University professor and our Professor Emeritus, Rhett Ludwikowski, who's here with us today with his wife, Anna. Welcome. And the late and wonderful Dean Ralph Rohner, God rest his soul, and I'm sure it is resting, in 1992. We have more than 600 U.S. JD graduates who have gone through that program, and almost 500 international graduates. We have Polish alumni throughout the country. And I thought I promised Lydia I would do this, but I mean it from the mind and the heart. For the students who are here, I recommend this program to you very highly. We have some alums here from the program. And at least alums of the program. And I visited for the first time. I was supposed to go earlier, but it was pushed off because of the pandemic. I visited for the first time in this last summer. First of all, what a beautiful city Krakow is, and loved strolling around there and that huge square, just fantastic. And yet small enough that I could run into some of our students on a park bench, which is wonderful. So I really encourage you to check that out and do it if you can. It's a wonderful experience to go with fellow students from here, but also Polish students and potentially other international students as well. We also have been doing our American Law Certificate program since 2000 with the Jagiellonian University. Over 1,000 graduates of the American Law program there. And we have our LLM in American Law program that's celebrating its 20th anniversary next academic year. And really the way that works is if the Polish students do the American Law Certificate program and do the Summer International Trade and Business program, I didn't quite get that all correct, and then come here for a summer, they can earn an LLM from us, and that's been a robust and great program as well. I also would encourage you to, if you're thinking about going, to look at the clinical opportunities. I think I saw Catherine Klein here. This is Catherine and Lydia and Paul Kurth, among others, have great, really fantastic opportunities for students to get clinical experience over there with top countries and legal departments. Really a good opportunity. And in fact, this cooperation between our law school and Jagiellonian established the first successful legal clinic in Central Europe. And it became a model for others in civil law countries. So our folks really led the way in that. So as I said, we're very honored to have the ambassador here to speak with us on this important topic in the war against Ukraine. And Poland on the border of that. It's important certainly not only to those two countries, but to all of us, the West and the world. So we're looking forward to his talk, and he's kindly agreed to do a bit of a question and answer session after his talk. So we're grateful for that. But now I'm going to turn it over to our third-year law student and Student Bar Association board member, also from Ukraine, Lydia Korostelova. Thank you, Lydia.
Marek Magierowski graduated from the Adam Mickiewicz University of Poznań. with a degree in Hispanic Studies. He was reporter, editor, and a columnist for over than 20 years, with his expertise in economy, business, foreign affairs, policy. Pan Magierowski also served as a deputy editor-in-chief, Forum and Rzeczpospolita. Around 2015, he was appointed as a head of the press office of the Chancellery of the President after working there as an expert on public diplomacy. In 2017 and 2018, he served as Undersecretary of the State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Before becoming an ambassador to the United States in 2021, he was as an ambassador of the State of Israel. Please welcome Ambassador Magierowski.
I love my connection with Poland too, especially with my beloved wife, Anna. This is a very strong bond. This picture was taken 6 years ago, so don't let yourselves be deceived by appearances. I'm not that handsome, unfortunately. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Mr. Payne, dear Lydia, thank you very much for this kind invitation. It's an honor and a privilege for me to talk about the current situation in Ukraine and Poland's role in the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe before such a distinguished audience. Thank you very much for your introduction. She wisely skipped some of the names of newspapers and magazines I used to work in, although for her it's naturally much easier to spell those names, but congratulations. Your pronunciation is perfect, like you were born in Poland, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a quote. About 60 years ago, Nikita Khrushchev, a name you might be familiar with, the former Secretary General of the Soviet Communist Party, paid a visit to Warsaw, and he delivered a speech at the Soviet embassy in the Polish capital. And he said, addressing the main enemy of the Soviet Union at the time, at the peak of the Cold War, the United States, saying, "We will bury you. History is on our side. We will bury you." Fortunately, he miscalculated. We already know that, as did Mr. Putin about a year ago. He miscalculated because he didn't realize how coherent, how strong, and how resilient the free world was during the Cold War in that proxy confrontation with the Soviet Union. But those words, that particular phrase uttered by Mr. Khrushchev at the time, "We will bury you," how reminiscent Mr. Putin's words today are of those remarks made by Mr. Khrushchev at the Soviet embassy in Warsaw at the beginning of the 60s. This leads me to a very clear conclusion. For an overwhelming majority of Soviet and then Russian politicians, diplomacy is a zero-sum game. Someone has to win crushingly in order for someone else to be defeated, painfully and irreversibly. This is the notion of diplomacy Soviet and Russian politicians, foreign ministers, decision makers have adhered to for decades. And they still do. For them, diplomacy is not about making and obtaining concessions. It's about defeating the enemy. And we can see that and we can hear that in so many remarks today by Foreign Minister Lavrov, by President Putin himself, by Russian ambassadors across the world. We were lucky to have lived under both systems. We were born under communism. We experienced command economy, oppression, and then we lived under democracy. We enjoyed free market economy, savage capitalism, especially at the beginning of the 90s, We enjoyed freedom of expression. We enjoyed democracy. So we can now see the contrast between communist rule and the democratic system we live in nowadays. And it's striking to see those vestiges, if you will, of Soviet mentality in today's Russia. I will give you one telling example. You probably remember those reports about mobile crematoria being brought to front lines in Ukraine in order to burn the bodies of the fallen Russian soldiers. We don't do that, do we? We do care not only about our soldiers, we also care about their bodies. We evacuate soldiers who were left, for example, behind enemy lines. But we also at least try to exfiltrate their bodies, because human life and human dignity are so important to us. They are so important in our civilization. Therefore, since the beginning of the war, I've had countless discussions with my colleagues from other EU embassies about whether we should define this confrontation as a clash of civilizations. To what extent Russia does not belong to our cultural circle. To what extent Russia is un-European. Unlike the Ukrainians, who have, this is my strong belief, who have demonstrated how European they are. Is Russia European? Could Russia become European in the foreseeable future? It's a question I don't have a ready answer to, but I think this is a question we should ask ourselves constantly in order to understand what is going on now in Ukraine and in Russia. In July last year, President Putin wrote and published a lengthy essay about historical connections between Russia and Ukraine, claiming that Ukraine is not even a nation. That Ukraine does not have, the Ukrainians do not have their own language, that the Ukrainians do not have their culture, they have no legacy, they have no history. Ukrainians are basically Russians, and the cradle of the Russian civilization was in Kiev, which is, well, partially true, but not entirely correct. He despises Ukraine and the Ukrainians. Is it a racist approach to one of the immediate neighbors of the Russian Federation today? I would say yes. This is a question I do have a ready answer to. This is a racist approach to another nation. Quite paradoxically, Mr. Putin has achieved a lot since the beginning of the war. He has strengthened the Ukrainian national identity. Before the war, very few people here in America or even in Europe knew what the Ukrainian colors looked like. Now everybody recognizes the Ukrainian flag. There are flags aplenty in all American cities. We went to Lake Placid last July. Lake Placid, near the Canadian border. A very nice place, but pretty remote, I would say. When we saw hundreds of Ukrainian flags in Lake Placid, also in a Catholic church. He has not only strengthened the Ukrainian national identity and the Ukrainian pride, he also reinvigorated NATO. He reinforced the European Union's cohesion. And he basically enlarged NATO by himself, with Sweden and Finland about to join this organization shortly, I hope. Putin's primary fear is, it is not Ukraine joining NATO, it is Ukraine joining the European Union. Because this is the most important driver, and has always been, for many European countries to develop, not only economically, but also socially and politically. So prosperous Ukraine, wealthy Ukraine, democratic Ukraine, liberal Ukraine, and Ukraine which is less corrupt. This is a nightmare for Mr. Putin and for the Russian ruling elite, because that would mean that it is possible for a post-Soviet republic to become European, to become part of the free world, to become part of the West. If you want to see the beginning of the end of Putin's rule in Moscow, in the Kremlin, you don't need to look at Moscow. You don't need to look at St. Petersburg. Try to have a closer look at what is going on in Kazakhstan, in Azerbaijan, in Uzbekistan, in all those post-Soviet republics in Central Asia, but also in some regions in the Russian Federation proper, like Chechnya, like Dagestan, Siberia. If all those countries and regions decouple themselves, distance themselves, both politically and economically from the Kremlin, that would kick off the disintegration of the Russian Federation as it is today. Before 1991, I think nobody believed that the Soviet Union would disintegrate so abruptly and under such dramatic circumstances. But it did. I don't know what the future of the Russian Federation will look like, but I do not rule out also this scenario of a disintegration of this country, because there are so many internal tensions of national character as well, that this country could really implode overnight. But Ukraine's future and Ukraine's fate is absolutely vital in this respect, and in the context of the continuity of President Putin's rule in Russia. Ukrainians are our brothers, our neighbors. We have not always been very friendly to each other. We have fought wars against each other, but now we share a common enemy, and it is also our political and Christian obligation to assist Ukraine in this unequal combat, in this unequal battle against the Russian aggressor. That's why we have already taken in, more than 2 million Ukrainian refugees. About 9 million of them have crossed the border with Poland since the beginning of the war. Many of them emigrated to other countries. Some of them returned to Ukraine, especially when the situation somehow stabilized in the western part of that country. But roughly 1.5 Ukrainian refugees did remain in Poland. And we have to combine two figures, those refugees I have just mentioned, and also approximately 1.5 million economic migrants from Ukraine who had lived and worked in our country before the war. And believe me, they integrate seamlessly, perfectly into the Polish society, into the Polish labor market. Luckily, our unemployment rate is ridiculously low, so we can absorb even more waves of Ukrainian refugees or migrants. A month after the beginning of the war, the Polish parliament passed a law which essentially facilitates their integration in Poland. For example, all Ukrainians can apply for Polish ID, which does not automatically make them Polish citizens. Nevertheless, they can set up their own businesses, they can send their children to Polish schools, they are eligible for free healthcare. Thousands of them got vaccinated, and I'm not talking only about COVID, but also other infectious diseases like measles. And again, they are most welcome. We've had, in recent months, about a dozen congressional delegations, members of Congress, American senators visiting Poland, to see up close what is going on the ground and how we are dealing with this particular issue. And they were asking my colleagues back in Warsaw from the Foreign Ministry, for example, could you please take us to one of those refugee camps in Poland? And my friends were staring at them in bewilderment, saying, but we've got none. Our apologies. Because an overwhelming majority of those Ukrainian refugees have been hosted in Polish homes by Polish families. There is not a single refugee camp in Poland. Interestingly, about 95% of those refugees are women and children. We've got very precise statistics on that, because we all know what the Ukrainian men are doing right now. And those women who arrive in Poland, they never say, I want welfare, or I want an allowance. I want the Polish authorities to take care of myself and of my family. They always say, I want a job. If I want to stay here, I want a job. I don't want to be a burden for anyone. And they get a job. And they get a job. They start working. They raise their kids in Poland. They send them to a Polish school. By the way, so far we have incorporated more than 200,000 Ukrainian children into the Polish schooling system, which is quite a challenge, of course, because we don't have, there is some shortage of Ukrainian-speaking teachers in Poland, as you can imagine. But we are doing our best to help them get proper education also in Poland. I'm not saying this is a model to follow for other European countries, but if you have followed all those migration crises, and I'm using the plural deliberately, over the last couple of years in some West European countries, you would see that they have chosen a different model of integration. What we offer the Ukrainian refugees is not the fish, it's the fishing rod. We want them, and we do appreciate, for instance, their contribution to the Polish economy. They are enriching us. So it's very interesting to see what will happen in the months to come and in the years to come. Poland's population has actually increased by about 3 million people because of those ways of migration and the inflow of refugees, and it's good. And I feel I'm confident that most of those Ukrainian refugees and migrants feel at home in Poland. It's the social dimension of this crisis and of this conflict. There are some other dimensions as well. Politically, as I said, Mr. Putin has miraculously strengthened our resolve, NATO's unity, and also the solidarity among EU member states. And this is the bright side of this equation. On the other hand, I can see a new political or geopolitical, if you will, realignment in both the European Union and NATO. I've got the impression that there are some countries which understand contemporary Russia much better than others. We have understood Russia for centuries, like the Czechs have, and the Baltics, all our Central European neighbors, but also quite intriguingly, the Scandinavians and the Anglo-Saxons. Not only the Britons and the Americans, but also Australia, Canada, New Zealand. They seem to be much more determined and much more attentive to what is going on in Russia and in Ukraine. They do understand Russia much better than some other West European countries, which I'm not going to name because I'm a diplomat. Poland, as I said, Poland has always understood Russia, Soviet and Russian mentality. I do love the Russian language. I'm enthralled by Russian culture. The Russian literature is absolutely amazing. Ballet, music, the litany is endless. Still, understanding the Russian language, I don't understand the Russians today. We have understood Russia and the Russians for many years. Now it's much harder for me to decipher the Russian mindset under Putin's rule. Poland, for example, talking about energy security, which is one of the pillars of our collective security in Europe. Poland has always been prescient. We've known from the get-go that Mr. Putin would one day use energy as a weapon. And he finally did, at the peak of this ongoing war in Ukraine, trying to blackmail European countries, cutting off gas supplies. He miscalculated again. But we knew that he would one day explore that avenue. And that's why, for example, 6 years ago, we inaugurated our first LNG terminal. In October last year, we opened the so-called Baltic Pipe, a gas pipeline which now transfers gas from the Norwegian continental shelf via Denmark to the Polish stretch of the Baltic coast. And we are now, believe me or not, but we are now entirely independent of imports of Russian gas, as opposed to some other Western countries in Europe. This is quite an accomplishment, taking into account the importance and the significance of energy needs in Europe. But quite sadly, I am a little bit concerned thinking about the future of our political and commercial relations with Russia, because this war will end at a certain point in the future. It must end. And of course, I keep my fingers crossed for Ukraine to win. By the way, I think we should also think about changing, modifying the terminology and the vocabulary we are using in this respect, because so many European politicians shy away from using the term victory. We do wish Ukraine victory, but many others say we are helping Ukraine now because we want Ukraine not to lose the war. It's not about not losing the war. It's about winning the war. It's about defeating the Russian army. It's about pushing back the occupiers. It's not about not only not losing the war. So we should start with the right terminology. Again, going back to my point about that concern about our future relations with Russia, there are many politicians in Europe, also business circles, which would like to return to normalcy, to business as usual in our bilateral European relationship with Russia. I don't think we can return to normalcy after everything what Mr. Putin has done to Ukrainians, that enormous, unimaginable suffering caused by Mr. Putin and his acolytes, and millions of Russians who are supporting this war. Unspeakable atrocities committed by Russian troops in Ukraine. Strikes against civilian infrastructure. Isn't it a terrorist state? This is not only my private opinion, but it is. It is. And it should be treated as such. And I do believe that maybe in 2, 3, 5 or 10 years' time, there will be an international tribunal. Probably we would have to establish a new one, which will try, sentence and punish all those murderers, all those responsible for crimes against humanity, which we are witnessing as we speak in Ukraine. On the final note, a few words about Poland's military aspirations. Of course, we are a frontline state, quite obviously, geographically. We have always been located between Germany and Russia, which is not a very pleasant place to be. There is a saying in Polish: if you have always lived in a remote village somewhere in eastern Poland, and you have never had the opportunity to cross a border, probably a border has crossed you. This is what has been happening to us for centuries. We are arming ourselves. Of course, we are buying a lot of weaponry, mostly from American defense companies, but not only. We do believe that the Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which is the foundation of the North Atlantic Alliance, is sacrosanct. And as President Biden has stressed on numerous occasions, we are going to defend every inch of NATO territory. Until recently, Poland has been perceived as a net recipient of security. Now, it is our goal and our priority to transition from this role to become a net provider of security. We are treating our obligations very seriously. We are very much committed to Article 5 and to the alliance as such. So we are ready and willing to defend not only Warsaw, not only our immediate neighbors, not only Prague or Budapest, we are ready to defend Berlin or Paris or Helsinki once Finland joins NATO. Even without Finland joining NATO, we would be ready to defend Helsinki. I believe so. Deterrence is key. The stronger Poland is, the stronger NATO is. This is quite obvious for us. We are not only relying on American help. Of course, we would like to see permanent presence of American troops on Polish soil. And we are pushing the current American administration in this direction because we think this would be a good thing to do for all of us. We do insist on the necessity of having a larger American military presence in Europe. And I can only echo the words of one of my favorite prime ministers in Europe, Sanna Marin, the Prime Minister of Finland, who said a few weeks ago that without America and without American contribution in Europe, we would be in a completely different place and situation today. You can only imagine where we would be, I mean Poland, if we had not joined NATO in 1999, alongside our friends from the Czech Republic and Hungary. Maybe you would see Mariupol in southern Poland and Bucha just across the border in eastern Poland. This is a very frightening prospect, and that's why Poland is arming itself, because we want to be prepared for any eventuality, in spite of all the guarantees we receive as a NATO member. But we do know that even if Putin is no longer at the helm in Russia, we are talking about 10, 15, maybe 20 years. I had the opportunity to attend an event with Bill Burns, the CIA director, last July in Aspen during the security conference, and he was asked about Mr. Putin's state of health. And he answered, well, unfortunately, he's very healthy. Something in vain. Anyway, even if there is no more Putin in Russia, we could get someone worse. Why not? A nationalist, a firebrand, a warmonger. Who knows? Russia is unpredictable. And again, Russia has always been, is, and will remain Poland's neighbor. It will not vanish miraculously from the map of Europe. So I would prefer Russia to be democratic, liberal, and a free market economy. But I'm not terribly optimistic about Russia's future. It's so important for Mr. Putin to highlight the importance of reputation, of respect. He says, for example, that Russia is encircled by NATO. Russia is endangered. Russia's future is jeopardized by the ever-expanding West. But believe me, we have also heard so many nuclear threats coming from the Kremlin. We will bury you. We will nuke you. But as a matter of fact, the only thing Putin has nuked so far is Russia's reputation. on the international stage. I feel so sorry, and believe me, I'm trying to be sincere. I feel so sorry for so many Russians who do not identify themselves with Mr. Putin, who do not identify themselves with this autocratic, bloodthirsty regime. They would like to live in peace, and they would like to be friends with the West, but they can't. And also their reputation has been, I believe, tragically and irreversibly dented. Thank you so much.